Silence. 17 seconds of metallic clicking, scraping noise crackled across the airwaves, then nothing. Frederick Valentich, 20 years old, and his Cessna 182L, registration VH-DSJ, were gone. The date was October 21st, 1978. The place, the darkening skies over Bass Strait, that notoriously moody stretch of water separating mainland Australia from Tasmania. What began as a seemingly routine solo night training flight from Melbourne's Moorabbin Airport to King Island unravelled in 6 minutes of chilling radio communication, leaving behind a mystery that nearly half a century later refuses to fade. Pilot error, a sudden catastrophic mechanical failure, an elaborately staged vanishing act, or something else entirely, something hinted at in those final desperate words transmitted to a bewildered air traffic controller? The disappearance of VH-DSJ remains stubbornly lodged in the annals of Australian aviation law, a vortex of conflicting evidence, baffling witness accounts, and the stark, terrifying possibility of an encounter with the unknown. To understand the enigma, one must first grapple with the pilot himself. Frederick Valentich, born just 2 decades before he vanished, was a young man consumed by the dream of flight. A former RAAF Air Training Corps member, his ambition burned bright, yet his path was undeniably turbulent. Twice rejected by the Royal Australian Air Force due to educational shortcomings, he was plugging away at part-time study for his commercial pilot licence. His flight log showed around 150 hours, enough experience to be granted a Class 4 instrument rating in May 1978, permitting night flight in clear visual conditions. But the theory side proved a persistent stumbling block. He had failed all 5 commercial licence subjects twice and failed 3 again just the month before his disappearance. His practical flying wasn't spotless either. Warnings for airspace incursions and deliberate flights into cloud painted a picture of questionable judgment, prompting some within the system to label him bluntly a terrible pilot or average at best. Yet this official narrative jarred against personal accounts. Friends and fellow flyers spoke of a pilot with natural ability, a steady temperament, someone meticulous and careful. His family, including Father Guido and fiancée Rhonda Rushton, depicted a dedicated, generally happy young man chasing his passion. Was he dangerously incompetent, prone to disorientation in the featureless night sky over water? Or a practically sound pilot battling academic hurdles, perhaps susceptible to specific errors rather than wholesale lack of skill? This dichotomy lies at the heart of many rational explanations. Adding another volatile layer was Valentich's known fascination with unidentified flying objects. Guido Valentich described his son as an ardent believer, even expressing fears of being attacked by them. Frederick had apparently confided in his father about a prior UFO sighting. This pre-existing belief system is a double-edged sword for investigators. Skeptics argue it primed him to misinterpret mundane phenomena. Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the star Antares were all visible that clear night, their lights perhaps distorted by atmosphere or reflection. Could he have even been chasing his own landing lights reflected off the glassy sea? Conversely, proponents of the UFO theory suggest his interest might have made him a more observant witness to something truly anomalous, or perhaps, chillingly, marked him. Some accounts suggest this interest only became widely known after he vanished, potentially amplified by the sensational nature of his final transmission. Regardless, his mindset is an inescapable filter through which his radio report must be interpreted. Then there was the flight itself. The stated purpose was shrouded in inconsistencies. To the Moorabbin briefing officer and the aircraft's owner, Southern Air Services, Valentich claimed he was flying to King Island to pick up friends. He took 4 life jackets, bolstering this story. Yet checks revealed no one was expecting him on the island. To his family and girlfriend, the story shifted. He was going to collect crayfish. Again, inquiries suggested no such arrangement existed. He also told his girlfriend he'd be back by 7:30 p.m, a return time deemed impossible for the round trip. These fabrications strongly suggest King Island was not his true destination, or at least not for the reasons stated. Did he have another undeclared purpose? Or were these inconsistencies part of a plan for a staged disappearance, a theory fueled by the aircraft's capabilities? The aircraft, VH-DSJ, was a Cessna 182L, a reliable workhorse of general aviation. Crucially, it had just passed a 100-hourly inspection suggesting sound mechanical condition. At 6:10 p.m, Valentich had it refueled to capacity. His flight plan noted a fuel endurance of 5 hours, ample for the planned round trip, but also giving the Cessna a theoretical range of up to 800 kilometers, 500 miles. Enough, potentially, to reach destinations far beyond King Island undetected. Adding to the oddities, he made no arrangements for the landing lights at King Island's uncontrolled airfield to be turned on, nor did he radio ahead. At 6:19 p.m. local time, VH-DSJ lifted off from Moorabbin. Valentich established radio contact with Melbourne Flight Service Unit FSU controller Steve Roby. The initial leg southwest towards Cape Otway on the Victorian coast proceeded without incident. He reported passing the Cape at 7 p.m, precisely on schedule. The weather was, by all accounts, perfect. Clear skies, excellent visibility, light winds. Sunset had occurred roughly 15 to 20 minutes prior, meaning he was flying into the deepening twilight over Bass Strait. While technically visual meteorological conditions, night flight over a dark, featureless sea presents unique challenges, even for seasoned pilots. Spatial disorientation, the inability to discern the aircraft's attitude relative to the true horizon, is a known killer. For a pilot, with Valentich's limited night hours and documented training issues, the risk was arguably heightened. It was 6 minutes past 7 when the routine flight turned bizarre. Roby asked for the aircraft type. Valentich couldn't identify it, describing only 4 bright lights like landing lights. Moments later, the situation escalated. Roby confirmed no known military or civilian traffic was nearby. Valentich's descriptions grew stranger, his voice reportedly laced with increasing stress. He confirmed his altitude was 4,500 feet. Roby pressed him again. Could he identify the aircraft?
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. Stand by.
Asked again to describe it, Valentich offered more details, his words punctuated by pauses and open mic static.
Delta Sierra Juliet, roger. How large would the object be?
A brief acknowledgement from Roby, then
Delta Sierra Juliet.
a few seconds later, confusion seemed to set in, or perhaps the object reappeared.
Delta Sierra Juliet, confirm the aircraft just vanished. Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you?
Then came the report of mechanical trouble significantly after the main description of the object's bizarre behaviour. Roby asked his intentions. What What followed was 17 seconds of open microphone transmission recorded by the flight service unit. Not static, not silence, but distinct sounds described variously as metallic scraping sounds, or metallic clicking, perhaps pulsing, sort of electronic. Researcher Richard Haynes, analysing the audio, reportedly identified 36 separate bursts with fairly constant start and stop pulses, no discernible patterns in time or frequency. These objective, recorded sounds resist easy explanation as standard engine failure noise or radio interference. They remain one of the most profoundly disturbing and inexplicable elements of the case. Silence. The alert phase was declared almost immediately. When VH-DSJ failed to arrive at King Island, the distress phase triggered a massive search at 7:33 p.m. Air Force P-3 Orions, civilian aircraft and sea vessels scoured base Strait for days, covering a vast area under what were described as ideal conditions. Nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick confirmed as aviation fuel. An initial slick near Cape Otway proved unrelated. No life jackets, no emergency beacon signal. The Cessna 182, while not designed for ditching, possessed some inherent buoyancy and was equipped with emergency gear. The complete lack of any immediate trace was, and remains, perplexing. Years later, in 2012, a detail emerged from previously less accessible Department of Transport files, an alleged note that a search aircraft had initially spotted a debris field consistent with a light plane crash but lost sight of it and couldn't relocate it. If true, this tantalizing clue supports a conventional crash but deepens the mystery of why the wreckage vanished so completely. Was it misidentified? Did it sink rapidly? Or was the initial report itself flawed? The official investigation by the Department of Transportation, culminating in a summary report released in May 1982, reviewed the transcript, weather, pilot history, and aircraft records. Some sources say the full 315-page file V116/783/1047 apparently exists in the National Archives. The conclusion was starkly unhelpful. The reason for the disappearance of the aircraft has not been determined. Frederick Valentich was officially listed as presumed fatal. Steve Roby, the controller on the other end of that final fateful transmission, remained baffled, convinced Valentich was genuinely distressed and not perpetrating a hoax. His perspective adds a crucial human element, though detailed public accounts from him remain limited. Intriguingly, some secondary analyses and podcast summaries have claimed the full DOT report listed UFO interaction as one of 4 likeliest scenarios. This would be an extraordinary admission for a government body. However, this claim isn't substantiated by the publicly available summary report and requires verification against the primary document. It may represent a misinterpretation of internal discussions rather than an official conclusion. The narrative of the full report being lost or difficult to access for years only adds to the conspiratorial undertones some attach to the case. Beyond the transcript, physical evidence is almost non-existent. The only potential piece recovered washed ashore on Flinders Island, east of the flight path, 5 years later in 1983. It was an engine cowl flap identified by the Bureau of Air Safety Investigation, or BASI, as belonging to a Cessna 182. Critically, its part number fell within a range known to include the serial number of VH-DSJ. BASI requested analysis from the Royal Australian Navy Research Laboratory to determine if ocean currents could plausibly carry such an object from near Cape Otway to Flinders Island over 5 years. The result of that analysis isn't documented in the provided sources. Without confirmation of plausible drift patterns, the cowl flap, while suggestive, remains inconclusive proof of a crash at the suspected location. It could have belonged to another aircraft in that production batch lost elsewhere. Adding fuel to the speculative fire are witness accounts from the ground that night. The most famous, yet problematic, are the photographs taken by plumber Roy Manifold near the Cape Otway Lighthouse around 6:45 p.m, roughly 20 minutes before Valentich's strange transmission began. Accounts diverge. Did Manifold see a disc emerge rapidly from the sea, or did he only notice an anomaly on one of his 6 developed sunset photos? That single photo shows a dark shape against the sky, above the water. Analysis proved highly contentious. Ground Saucer Watch, GSW, claimed enhancement revealed a solid metallic object trailing vapour. Others dismissed it as a developing error, a possible double exposure artifact, or even an out-of-focus insect or bird. RAAF officers reportedly deemed it something decaying. Without consensus or verification, the manifold photo remains a tantalising but ultimately unreliable piece of data. Claims that other photos from the sequence, supposedly showing the object emerging, are missing only deepen the controversy. Potentially more significant was a sighting near Apollo Bay. Witnesses, identified in one account as Ken Hansen and his nieces, in another as a family returning from rabbit shooting, possibly the same group, reported seeing lights consistent with a small aircraft descending steeply. Crucially, they also observed a distinct large green light hovering or moving directly above the descending lights. The lights traversed their view for about 90 seconds before vanishing behind terrain. This account strikingly corroborates Valentich's description of a green light associated with the object orbiting above him. Other reports surfaced of unexplained lights and aerial phenomena over Victoria and Bass Strait that same evening, contributing to a broader picture of unusual activity, though many lacked specific details or verifiable corroboration. So what happened to Frederick Valentich? Decades on, the theories remain largely unchanged, circling the scant evidence. Pilot error and disorientation. Valentich, despite his rating, had limited night VMC experience over water and documented training difficulties. He could have become spatially disoriented, mistaking stars, planets, or even his own reflected lights for another craft. His known UFO interest might have led him to interpret these illusions through that lens. He might have entered a graveyard spiral, an uncontrolled tightening turn where the pilot loses awareness of the aircraft's attitude, potentially explaining the engine noises, stress on the engine, or fuel starvation in a steep bank, and the final metallic sounds, structural failure or impact. The lack of wreckage remains the primary challenge to this theory. Mechanical failure. The Cessna, though recently inspected, could have suffered a sudden, catastrophic failure. The reported rough engine idling supports this. However, the detailed description of the UFO preceded the engine trouble report, making it less likely the engine issue caused the sighting. Again, the absence of debris is puzzling for a standard crash scenario. Staged disappearance. Valentich's conflicting stories about the flight's purpose, the excess fuel potentially allowing for a much longer flight, and the lack of arrangements at King Island strongly suggest deception. He had recently proposed to his girlfriend, but perhaps faced other pressures. Could he have flown undetected to a remote location? While appealingly conspiratorial, this theory struggles with the lack of any subsequent trace of Valentich or the aircraft anywhere. Successfully vanishing without a trace is exceptionally difficult. UFO encounter. This remains the most sensational yet persistent explanation fed directly by Valentich's own words. His detailed description of the object's appearance and behaviour, the distinct green light corroborated by ground witnesses, the inexplicable metallic sounds on the final transmission, and his definitive statement, "It's not an aircraft," form the core of this theory. Was he intercepted, abducted, or did the object inadvertently or deliberately cause his aircraft to crash or disintegrate? The lack of wreckage is consistent with some more extreme UFO hypotheses involving disintegration or removal of the craft. Nearly 5 decades have passed since VH-DSJ fell silent over Bass Strait. Frederick Valentich stepped into his Cessna chasing a dream and flew into an enigma. His family endured the agony of uncertainty. His fiancée Rhonda Rushton left with unanswered questions just as their life together was about to begin. The official file remains open, the conclusion undetermined. The recovered cowl flap whispers of a possible crash, but provides no answers. Witness accounts flicker between mundane misidentification and startling corroboration. The final transmission, with its chilling description and bizarre sounds, echoes across the years. Was Frederick Valentich a victim of his own limitations, lost in the disorienting darkness over the water? Did his aircraft betray him? Did he orchestrate a clever escape? Or did he, in those terrifying final minutes, truly encounter something beyond conventional understanding? Something metallic, silent, and not an aircraft, forever sealing his fate in the lonely expanse between sea and sky? The truth, like VH-DSJ itself, remains lost somewhere in the depths, or perhaps the heights, of the enduring Valentich vanishing.